There's a dangerous lie many of us are taught from a young age, that in order to be respected, we need to be liked. We bend, we accommodate, we nod along, and before we know it, we're not leading our lives, we're performing in them. You can't earn true respect by being everything to everyone, because when you chase approval, you abandon authenticity, and people don't respect what's fake. They may applaud it, they may tolerate it, but they don't respect it. Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked away from a conversation and felt completely drained? Like you gave too much of yourself just to avoid disappointing someone? We grow up believing that if people like us, they'll respect us. That being agreeable, available, and accommodating will make us valuable in the eyes of others. It's a belief that gets reinforced subtly through praise for being the easy one, the team player, the one who doesn't cause problems. And so we internalize this, that our worth is tied to how many people approve of us. But here's the truth we often discover too late. Approval is not the same as respect. Approval is shallow, it's surface level. People approve of things they find pleasant, agreeable, or convenient. You can get someone's approval just by telling them what they want to hear. You can be liked by being polite, compliant, and non-threatening. But being liked doesn't mean being respected. You can be everyone's favorite, yet be overlooked when it truly matters. Because respect, real lasting respect, is not given to those who always say yes. It's given to those who stand for something even when it's hard. The person who tries to please everyone ends up pleasing no one. Why? Because when you're constantly shifting your words and actions to fit other people's expectations, you're not showing up as you. You're showing up as a reflection of what others want. And people can sense that. Even if they can't put their finger on it, they feel that something's off. It's hard to respect someone who doesn't show us who they really are. Respect is rooted in consistency. It comes from knowing that a person has values and that they stick to them. They don't bend with every wind. They're not trying to win every room. They show up the same way, regardless of who's watching. This kind of consistency creates trust. And trust is the foundation of respect. The hard part is seeking approval feels good. It's addictive. Every time we avoid conflict by agreeing or gain praise by fitting in, we get a small hit of validation. But over time, those hits come at a cost. We lose our voice. We lose our edge. We lose our identity. And worst of all, we begin to resent the very people we're trying to please. Because deep down, we know we're not being respected. We're just being used. The shift begins when we stop asking, do they like me? And start asking, am I proud of who I'm being? That question changes everything. It puts the focus back on integrity instead of image. It reminds us that our self-respect is worth more than someone else's approval. And when we live in alignment with our values, when we speak our truth, even if it's unpopular, we send a clear message. I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to be real. And ironically, that's when people begin to respect you. Not because you're pleasing them, but because you're showing them strength. Because you're giving them something solid to believe in. The truth is, people don't respect perfection. They respect principle. They respect people who are brave enough to stand alone when it's easier to go along. So we need to stop confusing popularity with purpose. The most respected people in the world are rarely the most liked. They've upset people, they've lost followers, they've stood firm in moments where silence would have been safer. And yet they're the ones we remember, not for how agreeable they were, but for how courageous they were. You don't need everyone to like you. You need to like yourself. You need to be able to look in the mirror and know that you didn't sell out who you are for a few moments of praise. Respect doesn't come from being easy to be around. It comes from being clear about where you stand. So stop chasing approval, start honoring yourself. Speak honestly, set boundaries, say no when you mean it. Be the person you admire. That's how respect is earned. Not through smiles and nods, but through quiet strength. Through living in a way that says, I know who I am, and I don't need your permission to be that. Approval is cheap, respect is earned, and only one of those will carry you through life with your integrity intact. We often confuse being kind with being accommodating. We say yes when we mean no. We avoid hard conversations, not because we're afraid of the topic, but because we don't want to make someone uncomfortable. We go along with things we don't believe in just to keep the peace. And then we pat ourselves on the back for being kind. But what we're doing isn't kindness, it's self-betrayal. And it's so cleverly disguised that we don't even see it happening. True kindness never requires you to abandon yourself. It never asks you to silence your truth, shrink your needs, or suppress your emotions, just to make someone else more comfortable. When you consistently put other people's desires above your own well-being, that's not generosity. It's a slow erosion of your identity. And over time, this pattern doesn't just exhaust you, it breaks your relationship with yourself. You might start to feel resentful. You'll find yourself irritated by the very people you're trying so hard to please. Not because they're doing anything wrong, but because deep down you know that your sacrifices aren't truly voluntary. You're not giving out of joy, you're giving out of obligation, guilt, or fear. And that kind of giving always comes with a cost. We betray ourselves when we don't speak up for what we need. When we tell ourselves that our voice doesn't matter as much. When we endure discomfort so someone else can remain comfortable. We call it patience. We call it maturity. But if we're honest, it's often just avoidance. Easier to swallow our needs than to risk conflict. So we pretend we're being kind, when in fact we're just scared. This kind of self-betrayal is deceptive, because the world often praises it. You're seen as the good one, the one who's always there, the one who never complains. But there's a difference between being helpful and being a doormat. One comes from strength, the other comes from insecurity. And people can feel the difference, even if they don't say it. You teach others how to treat you by what you tolerate. Every time you smile through discomfort, you send the message that it's okay to cross your boundaries. Every time you say it's fine when it's not, you reinforce the belief that your feelings don't count. And over time, people stop asking. They stop checking in, not because they're malicious, but because you've trained them to believe you don't mind. And the longer you do this, the more disconnected you become from your own truth. You stop asking yourself what you want. You lose touch with your own preference. You become so focused on managing everyone else's emotions that you neglect your own, until one day you wake up tired. Not physically, but emotionally. Drained from carrying the weight of everyone's expectations and abandoning your own. Kindness isn't about being nice at your own expense. Real kindness includes you. It means you can care for others without sacrificing your self-respect. It means setting boundaries and still being loving. It means saying no with clarity, instead of yes with resentment. The kindest people are not the ones who say yes to everything. They're the ones who know how to say yes to themselves without guilt. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone access to your time, energy, or emotions if they're not treating you with respect. Being kind doesn't mean being endlessly available. It means showing up with honesty. It means being real about what you need and where you stand. It's not selfish to protect your peace. It's not rude to say no. It's not cruel to ask for space. These things are not signs of weakness. They're signs of emotional maturity. They say I value myself enough not to lie about how I feel. That's not betrayal. That's integrity. The world doesn't need more people who bend before they break. It needs more people who are strong enough to be kind and honest. People who can give without losing themselves. People who can love without abandoning their truth. So the next time you feel the urge to say yes, just to keep the peace, pause, ask yourself, am I being kind? Or am I betraying myself again? Because if you're not honoring your truth, it's not kindness. It's just fear pretending to be virtue. And you deserve better than that. Most people think boundaries push others away. They believe setting limits makes them seem cold, unkind, or distant. But that's a misunderstanding. Boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges. They don't block connection. They enable real connection, because without boundaries, there can be no trust. And without trust, any relationship, personal, professional, or even with yourself, will eventually crumble. Boundaries are how we teach others how to treat us. They are clear markers of what's okay and what's not. They show people where we end and they begin. And this clarity creates safety. It allows both people to relax into a relationship. without guessing or fearing invisible rules. When someone sets healthy boundaries, they are telling you, you can trust me to be honest. You can trust me to speak up if something's not okay. And you can trust that when I say yes, I actually mean it. Without boundaries, we invite confusion, miscommunication, and resentment. We start doing things we don't want to do, saying yes when we feel no, showing up out of guilt instead of genuine desire. And then we blame others for taking advantage of us, when in reality we never told them where the line was. People can't honor boundaries we never set. Ironically, the more you try to please others by erasing your own limits, the more you damage the relationship. You might think you're being generous or selfless, but what you're actually doing is building quiet resentment. And resentment doesn't stay quiet forever. It leaks out in tone, in body language, in passive-aggressive comments, in withdrawal. And that's what destroys trust. Not the boundary itself, but the lack of it. Boundaries make people feel safe because they remove uncertainty. When you set a boundary, you're saying, here's how you can be close to me without hurting me. That's not selfish. It's generous. You're giving someone a roadmap to healthy connection. You're saying, I value this relationship enough to make sure it's sustainable. That level of honesty builds deeper, stronger trust than pretending everything is okay when it's not. In leadership, boundaries are just as critical. A leader without boundaries creates chaos. When expectations are unclear, when availability is unlimited, and when standards constantly shift, teams feel lost. But a leader who communicates clear limits about time, workload, behavior, and communication creates an environment of stability. People trust leaders who are consistent. They know what to expect, and that predictability builds confidence. The truth is, boundaries are an act of respect. Respect for yourself and respect for others. Because when you show someone where your limits are, you're also giving them permission to do the same. You're saying, it's okay to speak up. It's okay to take care of yourself. It's okay to be honest here. That creates mutual trust, a space where no one has to pretend, overextend, or silently suffer. It takes courage to set boundaries, especially if you're used to being the fixer, the helper, the one who never says no. You might fear rejection. You might worry people will think you're difficult or selfish, and some will. But the people who truly value you, those are the ones who will respect your boundaries, not resist them. In fact, those are the people who will trust you more because of them. Think about the people you trust most in your life. Chances are, they're the ones who are honest with you. The ones who can say, I need space right now, or that doesn't work for me, without guilt or manipulation. They don't try to do everything or be everything. And you trust them because their yes means yes, and their no means no. That's the power of boundaries. You don't build trust by being constantly available. You build it by being consistently real. You build it by saying what you mean, doing what you say, and honoring your own needs, so you can show up fully and authentically for others. Boundaries aren't about control. They're about care. They allow you to give from a place of fullness instead of obligation. They create space for honest connection, and they ensure that the people in your life are connecting with you, not a version of you that's stretched thin, burnt out, or silently resentful. In the end, boundaries don't distance people. They bring them close, not through forced closeness or fake harmony, but through clarity, consistency, and real trust. And that kind of trust is what every meaningful relationship is built on. It's natural to want to be liked. We're wired to seek connection, approval, and belonging. But somewhere along the way, many of us start to confuse being liked with being accepted. We believe that agreement equals harmony, and that going along with others, even when it contradicts what we truly believe, will keep us safe, respected, and connected. But here's the truth. If you have to hide who you are to be accepted, then the version of you being accepted isn't really you. It's a mask, and no one can respect a mask, because a mask has no soul. That's why authenticity matters more than agreement. When you constantly adjust your opinions, behavior, and boundaries to match what others want, you dilute yourself. You water down your truth in the hope that it will be easier for others to swallow. But what you gain in agreement, you lose in self-respect. And slowly, Over time, you lose the ability to recognize your own voice, because it's been drowned out by the noise of external validation. Authenticity is not about being loud, aggressive, or rebellious. It's not about forcing your views on others, or needing to be right. It's about being honest, first with yourself, and then with others. It's about living in alignment with your values, even when it would be easier to pretend. It's about having the courage to say, this is what I think, this is how I feel, this is who I am, without apologizing for it. People often think that in order to keep peace in a relationship, they need to agree. But true peace doesn't come from pretending to be on the same page. It comes from mutual respect, even when there are differences. Real relationships, whether personal, professional, or social, can handle disagreement. They don't fall apart when someone says, I see this differently. In fact, they grow stronger, because both people feel safe being themselves. You can't build real connection without authenticity. Agreement might create comfort, but authenticity creates trust. And trust is what makes people feel seen, heard, and valued, not because you echo their views, but because you show them who you really are. That kind of honesty is rare, and people respect it, even if they don't agree with it. Think about the people you admire. Chances are, they're not the ones who blend in. They're the ones who stand out, not because they shout the loudest, but because they stay true to themselves. In a world that pressures everyone to conform, they don't chase applause. They speak from conviction. And it's not their agreement that earns your respect. It's their consistency, their clarity, and their courage. Of course, being authentic isn't always easy. There will be moments when you're misunderstood, times when people walk away because they preferred the version of you that made them comfortable. But here's the thing. The people who leave when you show your truth were only ever connected to your mask. Let them go, because the ones who stay, the ones who value your authenticity, are the ones who are worth building with. When you choose authenticity over agreement, you reclaim your power. You stop needing everyone to like you, because you've learned to like yourself. You no longer twist yourself into shapes to fit other people's molds. You stand as you are, and that's enough. That's where freedom lives. That's where self-respect grows. That's where real confidence is built, not on applause, but on alignment. You're not here to be a mirror for other people's beliefs. You're here to live your truth. Not everyone will agree with it. Not everyone will support it. But the ones who matter will respect it. And more importantly, you'll respect yourself. That's the foundation of a meaningful life. One rooted, not in pretending, but in presence. Not in performance, but in purpose. So the next time you feel the pressure to nod along, to stay silent, or to pretend you agree just to keep things smooth, pause. Ask yourself, am I choosing comfort over honesty? Am I choosing approval over truth? And most of all, am I showing up as who I truly am, or who I think they want me to be? Because the world doesn't need more agreeable people. It needs more real ones. People who are brave enough to be seen fully, even if that means being misunderstood. Because authenticity will always outlast agreement, and respect will always follow truth. People are drawn to clarity, not perfection, not charisma, not term clarity. When someone knows who they are, what they stand for, and what they expect, others naturally begin to trust and respect them. That's because clarity removes confusion. It gives people a clear picture of what they're dealing with. And in a world full of mixed signals, vague intentions, and blurred boundaries, that kind of clarity is rare and valuable. Most of the time, people don't struggle with whether they like you or not. They struggle with understanding where you stand. Are you consistent? Do you mean what you say? Do your words match your actions? When someone is unclear, when they send mixed messages, avoid hard conversations, or constantly change based on who they're around, it creates a sense of instability, and instability leads to doubt. You can't trust what you can't predict, and what you can't trust, you can't respect. Clarity is powerful, because it makes people feel safe. When they know where you stand, they know how to relate to you. They don't have to guess how you're feeling, or what you expect. They don't have to tiptoe around. Instead, they can relax, because they understand the rules of engagement. Whether it's in leadership, friendships, clarity creates emotional safety. And from that safety, trust and respect grow. When a leader is unclear, when they give inconsistent direction, avoid feedback, or shift expectations without communication, it frustrates people. Teams feel lost. Morale drops. Not because people are lazy,
but because they don't know what's expected. A clear leader, on the other hand, creates a strong sense of purpose. They don't have to micromanage. Their clarity does the heavy lifting. People are motivated when they know where they're going and why it matters. The same is true in personal relationships. When someone communicates their needs clearly, expresses their boundaries, and speaks honestly about their emotions, it might create temporary discomfort, but it builds long-term trust. There's no confusion. You don't have to guess what they're thinking. You can trust them to be real with you. That reliability creates deeper connection, even when the truth is hard to hear. Some people think that being clear means being harsh, but clarity isn't cruelty. You can be clear and still be kind. In fact, kindness without clarity often leads to resentment. We try to be nice by avoiding truth, softening our message, or saying what we think someone wants to hear. But what we call kindness is often just fear of confrontation. And when we prioritize comfort over clarity, we damage relationships in the long run. Being unclear might feel easier in the moment, but it creates a mess that someone eventually has to clean up, usually with more pain than if the truth had been told up front. Telling someone what they need to hear, even if it's difficult, is an act of respect. It says, I believe you're strong enough to handle the truth, and I care enough about this relationship to be honest with you. Clarity also means being clear with yourself. It means knowing what you value, what you need, and what you won't compromise on. When you're unclear with yourself, you become inconsistent with others. You tolerate things you shouldn't. You say yes when you mean no. You confuse people not because you're deceptive, but because you're disconnected from your own truth. Getting clear with yourself is the first step to being clear with the world. There's a certain calm that comes from clarity. You don't have to over-explain. You don't need to defend yourself constantly. You just live in alignment with what you believe. That clarity becomes a compass. It guides your decisions, shapes your relationships, and creates a life rooted in truth, not in performance or guesswork. Respect isn't just about what you say. It's about how consistently and clearly you live your value. When people see that your actions align with your words, they begin to trust you, and trust over time becomes respect. So be clear, say what you mean, show people where you stand. Don't trade your clarity for temporary comfort, because the people who matter, the ones who are meant to walk with you, will not only handle your truth, they'll respect you more for it. Self-respect is the foundation of every healthy choice we make. It's the quiet force behind the boundaries we set, the standards we uphold, and the people we allow into our lives. Without self-respect, we move through life in reaction mode, constantly adjusting, apologizing, and compromising, in hopes that others will validate us. But no amount of outside approval can fill the space that a lack of self-respect leaves behind. Because the truth is simple. If you don't respect yourself, no one else truly will. So many people spend their lives trying to earn the respect of others, while ignoring the one voice that matters most, their own. They go out of their way to be liked, to be accepted, to be seen as successful. But in doing so, they often abandon themselves. They say yes when they mean no. They tolerate mistreatment to avoid being alone. They lower their standards out of fear that keeping them high means staying empty-handed. And slowly, piece by piece, they lose the sense of who they really are. Self-respect isn't about arrogance or self-importance. It's not about thinking you're better than anyone else. It's about recognizing your worth and living in a way that reflects it. It's about knowing what you will and will not accept, not just from others, but from yourself. It means holding yourself accountable to your own value. It means being honest with yourself, even when it's hard. It means not letting insecurity drive your decisions. When you respect yourself, your life begins to change, not because the world around you shifts, but because your standards rise. You no longer tolerate the things you once accepted: disrespect, manipulation, inconsistency, or emotional crumbs. You begin to realize that peace is better than attention, that solitude is better than fake company, that being true to yourself is far more valuable than being liked for a version of you that isn't real. There's a quiet strength in self-respect. It doesn't beg, chase, or convince. It doesn't try to prove worth through performance or productivity. It simply is. It shows up in how you speak, how you carry yourself, and how you respond to challenges. It shows up when you choose to walk away from what no longer serves you, even when it's difficult. It shows up when you protect your time, your energy and your emotional space, not out of selfishness, but out of self-awareness. Self-respect also teaches others how to treat you. When you honor your own boundaries, people learn that you won't allow them to be crossed. When you speak with honesty and live with integrity, people see that your word holds weight. You don't have to demand respect. It becomes a natural response to the way you live. And even if some people don't like it, they'll be forced to acknowledge it. But self-respect isn't always loud. It's not always seen or praised. Sometimes it's the choice to stay silent, rather than engage in pointless conflict. Sometimes it's walking away from situations you once would have stayed in far too long. Sometimes it's letting go of the need to be understood by those who are committed to misunderstanding you. It's the internal victory of choosing yourself, even when it feels lonely. Of course, cultivating self-respect doesn't happen overnight. It's built through small, intentional choices. Every day, it's saying I matter, not just in theory, but in action. It's choosing rest over burnout. It's learning to say no, without guilt. It's refusing to shrink yourself, to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. And over time, these choices shape a life that reflects dignity, not desperation. The irony is, the more you respect yourself, the less you seek that respect from others. Not because it doesn't matter, but because it no longer defines you. You stop depending on external validation to feel worthy. You become grounded in who you are. And when you walk through life with that kind of certainty, people notice. They may not always agree with you, but they'll respect you, because self-respect commands it. You don't have to be perfect to respect yourself. You just have to be honest about what you need, what you value. And when you start living like you believe in your own worth, the world responds, not with constant applause, but with the deeper kind of recognition that only authenticity or respect from others is meaningful. But self-respect comes first, because without it, nothing you gain will ever feel like enough. And with it, even the smallest wins feel like freedom.